That's a riot. I'm an alcoholic. It is great to be here. I want to thank Bruce for inviting me, and Michael and everybody who welcomed me. Tom Carroll, I know Tom, pardon me, Tom, just blew your anonymity. This is a good meeting. I've been here before, and if you're new, you're really in a good place. And happy birthday to Cameron and Jeanette. You're showing us AA works, so thank you. I loved what you said, Jeanette. I know, I just loved it. I'm with you. And so let's see here. Well, my sobriety date's January 30th, 1983. That kind of matters. And I am extremely grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous for that. This is my third time in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the reason I am here is because it stopped being funny. I wasn't taking it seriously, and this time I was desperate. And it's a crummy feeling, but if you're feeling that way, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's what made me pay attention. It's what made me start doing what we do here, and it's why I have the time I have in part. And I do have a sponsor, and I did the things you suggested. I might have grumbled, I might have cried, I might have written your name on the bottom of my shoes, but I did it, you know, and I'm a product of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm very grateful for that. The shorthand of this sobriety is by the time I came in this time, I had been uninvited to one entire country. Thank you very much. And I was living illegally in another country, and they knew, and I knew they knew, and it was very uncomfortable. And then I had been uninvited pretty much as well to most organizations I can think of standing up here talking to you, including my own family. And if you're new and you had that same thing happen and you're feeling bad about yourself, you know what? I got my family back because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't even want my family back, you know, but I got my family back. And you got to keep an eye on AA. It starts working, and you got to keep up. And the other thing that was, I felt an unfortunate misunderstanding is the fact I happened to be married to two people at the same time. And it could happen to anyone, come on. And I tried to parlay it. I don't know if you did that with your problems. You know, I tried to treat it like an accounting problem when when they became aware, the other parties involved. And they didn't go for it. You know, they were like, what do you mean you lost count? It ain't a high number, 1, 2. You know, and you just got nowhere to stand eventually, and it's a terrible feeling. And so I felt terrible. I felt terrible, and I am glad I felt terrible. I do not intend to feel terrible like that again. And I live for today, but I do the things that I was taught to do. I appreciate you inviting me here. I'm here to thank you for the 12-step call you paid on me, because this meeting and other meetings like this meeting are very much a part of my sobriety. And I try to pay attention and listen to what alcoholism is, because I want to know what it is so that I keep an adequate program. And stuff happens in life. Actually, I got run over in December by an alcoholic. I got run over, and they were sober, and it was somebody I knew. It was me. Just so you know who you're dealing with here. Yes, it was me. And I shared that in a meeting, and they said, well, how did you do that? And what I wanted to ask them is, why would you want to know how to do that? You know, you don't need to know how to do that, but I did it. And I am a person who, I would say I'm a little alternative. You know, I'm still a little odd, but I get along in the world. And people know I'm a little odd, and they find it entertaining, or they, you know, just set it aside. And I recently retired, and the people at work knew there was something about me, you know, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. And I don't mind, you know, I'm among you. I am sober. This should not be the case. I should not be here at all. And I'm well aware of that. You know, we talk about the effect produced by alcohol. The effect produced by alcohol in me is death. That's what it is. That's the bottom line. That didn't happen to me. I felt close to it. If I wasn't close to it, I'm glad I felt close to it. And if you're new here, it's a fatal, progressive, incurable malady. You're in any doctor's office and they say that to you about whatever's wrong with you, you're going to call somebody. If you're me, you're going to be crying. And I came and heard that in AA, and I just thought, I don't know. I was like that. And I did not respect this illness. And it showed me I needed to respect it, or something else was going to happen. You'd have a different speaker. So I'm going to tell you what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now, and I need to keep track of my time so you don't rush the podium. I've heard of people like you, but where? Here it is. Okay, thank you. Yes, I know all about you. And so what I used to be like is a very unhappy person. What I used to be like, here's the thing for me. I've lived to the other side of myself because of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm grateful for that. And there are words we use in AA that I now look at my life, and they make sense to me in new applications. There's the word identification. Identification. We identify with each other here. It is that you have the same thing wrong with you that I have wrong with me. It may not be the only thing wrong with you, but it is what is the unifying force in our community. This is what is wrong with me. I have an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. And this is not about addiction. Addiction is a normal reaction to addictive substances. And if you use addictive substances, you get addicted. Alcoholism is an allergy. It's an abnormal reaction. And I had to get very didactic about that with myself. If you want to dial out, that's fine. Because I missed that the first 2 times. I missed this little feature, obsession of the mind. I ain't drunk up here, but I still got alcoholism. And I got obsession. It's a feature of my thinking, And this ain't something that 2 alcoholics talking in 1935 came up with or any other time. It's why the doctor's opinion is in the big book, because it's a doctor. And Dr. Silkworth had this small study group, I guess you'd call it, of 40,000 alcoholics. That's quite a few. And he's the one that came up with the diagnosis, not us. He's the one who said, after looking at us and looking at us and looking at us and watching us die and watching us die and watching us get committed because the medical community wanted nothing to do with us because they couldn't do nothing with us, he came up with this thing about obsession of the mind. And I overlooked that. And that's why I'm here now. I don't overlook it. I got this allergy and the obsession. Okay, so we're same page here with that stuff. And I'm grateful for it. I got to hear it because I feel far away from a drink. But I have a friend who had 44 years, and they went out. We are not immune from drinking. And there's something in me that wants to tell me that I am. And that's that little baby called obsession. It is the ego. It is the ism. It ain't funny. And so before I had any of that going on, I was unhappy, as I said. And here's why I was unhappy. I did not fit in any of the places that I think normal people identify with. I was not identifying. I did not identify with my family. My family were like nice-looking people. And I was this tall, skinny thing with buck teeth and scraggly hair. That is actually a direct quote from a police report, okay? Get it out. Funny to you. It was not funny to me. And I couldn't articulate why I felt so weird around my family. And I'm a person, as an alcoholic, I don't just overdrink. I overmarry, as I mentioned. I overlike people who underlike me. I overdraft, I oversleep, I underdress. And so I can't get it right. And I am a powerless person, and I didn't know that word. And you know what? I'm rageful. My powerlessness is rageful. And so I was this mad little kid is what I was. And I saw powerlessness in my dad. I grew up in an alcoholic home. It ain't why I'm alcoholic. I'm alcoholic because I drank my way into this place. But I saw it, and there was nothing about it to recommend it to me. And it was a word I could never have applied to my father in a million years. My dad was a big guy, bigger than anybody here. My dad was 6'7". My dad played All-American basketball in Madison Square Garden. He was a gifted athlete. And yet he was alcoholic. He got some attention in the newspapers. He went on to become a successful businessman for a short period of time, but he had alcoholism. And you know what? It's interesting. It don't care who you are. It doesn't care if you dribble a ball well. It doesn't care if you got a lot of money in the bank. It doesn't care if you got no money in the bank. It doesn't care if you're a loser. It doesn't care. It just bores its way through your life and dumps it out on the other end. And that is what happened to my father. And I didn't quite know what I was seeing, but it was scary. And it's a family illness. This is a crazy thing. Alcoholism, they drink it, me. They drink it, and everybody's affected. What is that? it's alcoholism. And it ain't contagious like the thing that's kept us in these few years. But I think it's spiritually contagious because it affected my whole family. It did. I didn't understand. And so my father was removed. You know, it's not personal, it's alcoholism. You drive drunk. I mean, you don't even have to be alcoholic to drive drunk. I don't know about you, but you get removed if you're caught, you know? And if you show up for work and you got a hangover, or maybe you're drinking on the job, you're irresponsible. Maybe you're dangerous, you get removed. And if you come home and you're drunk, maybe you beat up somebody in the family, you get removed from the family, you get removed. And my dad got removed. And that was shocking to me. And you know, when I came to AA, I didn't believe in powerlessness. But I'll tell you something. This time coming in, here's the deal. I think if you ain't powerless, you can't explain it to somebody. If they ain't powerless, they ain't gonna get it. But when you are powerless, nobody has to explain it to you. And I became powerless. I knew what that was. I understood that. And I'm gonna tell you something else. I've been sober a long time. And I wish you the gift of hearing people that I remember when I came in who so touched my sobriety. There was Liz Lepreste. I'll use her name because she's gone. But she said this thing that has so struck me lately. She said that she, at that point in her sobriety, she'd been sober a long time, her sex inventory became her gratitude list. Don't you love that? That's fantastic. and when she said that, it was funny as hell to me. But it's kind of come true, people. That's what I'm saying. And so I love these things that Alcoholics Anonymous, it knows me. You know me. And I need to be known, and I need to be present, and I need to be messy in meetings or not doing it right, or doing it right because you notice and you say something to me, and it's because you care. You ain't minding my business. It's the common welfare of Alcoholics Anonymous. Every one of you matters to this meeting. You know, commitments and showing up and be regular. And it's that thing of recognizing these folks are coming back again. Why? Why am I here with 40 years? Because I still got alcoholism. But I got a way up and out, and I share it. And maybe you identify with it, and maybe I can help you. And it's something I want to do. And when I came here and I heard that we were to be of maximum service to other people or something like that, I thought, that sounds like a kitchen utensil. You know, I was not interested, and now I am vitally interested. Caring about you has been a spiritual awakening for me. The ability to think of other people. I am a different person. Sickeningly grateful. I reek of joy. I might cry. I don't know. And I don't care. Because when I came here, it wasn't going that way for me. It wasn't going good for me at all. So when I was a kid, I was mad. And sometimes disenfranchised kids join gangs. And I went to kindergarten, first of all, so like I peaked at 5. Because you know what my problem is without a spiritual program? I hate people. What are they for? I mean, really. Because like you're looking at me, and I know you're thinking something, and I don't like what you're thinking without a program. I know you're thinking something I don't want you to think, and I can't control it, you know? And I went to kindergarten, and they were looking at me like you're looking at me. And there were like too many of them to kill. You know, that's my basic living. And when I found out I was having to be in school, the educational system, till I was 18, forget it. I hated it. I hated everything immediately. My life was over. And so I was disenfranchised, so I joined a gang. Some people do. And the problem is that I brought me to the gang. This is something you pointed out to me. Wherever you go, see you go. And I went to this gang, and you know, we have traditions in Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new, we read them tonight. These are things that are like the culture of the organization to keep it intact. And other organizations have those too. And this organization, first of all, some gangs have colors. You probably know that, some people. Well, the colors of this gang were ugly, okay? And I tell you what I think. They didn't appreciate it. So there was that. And then I started doing stuff. You know, like how in high school, I don't know if you did this, but I was disenfranchised. So if I walk down the hall and I go past you, I don't like you, you know, I do that kind of thing. So I started doing that kind of thing in this gang. And just so you know how dangerous I really am, so that you're really afraid if you want to thank me at the end of this thing, this gang is also known as Girl Scouts, okay? And, yeah. And if you're familiar with Girl Scouts, you will know that they have these things called Girl Scout cookies, and it's a very big deal, these cookies. And I was doing something funny with the cookie money. I was cooking the books, okay? And when Girl Scouts noticed this, they didn't appreciate it. And so to share in a general way, I no longer was a Girl Scout, okay? And, oh, now I'm gonna have to go back in the coffin. That is one way to shut me up, I'll tell you. Okay. I'm going to put my sunglasses on. Okay. I didn't hear that. What was that? Oh, okay. That's easier. It's not as exciting, but it's easier. Okay, so I was uninvited to this gang. And this was the beginning of a fatal progression. This is something the book talks about. If you're new, it refers to the trajectory of the drinking. However, it could easily have applied to the fact that, as I mentioned, every organization that I became a part of pretty much uninvited me to be in their organization. And, you know, I had a rough ride there. When I was 17 or 18, I had my first official drink, and I was afraid of it because I'd seen what happened to my dad. And it was a local college watering hole, and there was a toss-up there for me between fear of people, because I hate people, and fear of the drink. And so I ended up taking the drink, and it was a beer. It was no big deal, you know, nothing fancy. And what I can't tell you is if it was the first sip of the beer, or the middle of the glass, or the bottom of the glass, or the bottom of the evening, I don't know, bottom of the pitcher, but somewhere along the line, this thing we talk about, the effect produced, happened for me. And we'd all maybe describe it different ways, but in my case, here's what it was for me. I had this problem all my life up to that point of looking at you in kindergarten, and looking at you and your family, and you in church, and you in all the places that I did not feel welcome, and you looked comfortable. And this drove my rage. In fact, one of the folks I was over married to one time said to me, you know something, I think you are like the angriest person I have ever met. To which I replied, that makes me angry, you know. Just so original. And so I took the drink. And the effect produced was that feeling that I had thought about day and night of looking at you in all those places and you were fine and my life sucked. That feeling like packed its bag and put its hat on and walked out the back door of my life. That's what happened. And what I'm going to tell you is if you have a problem as big as that was to me, I don't know about you, I'm going to seek the answer to that problem out as often as I could. And I began to take geographics. I grew up in Montana, we have reservations there. I began to drink on the reservations. I'm a big geographic taker. The thing I'm trying to get out of is self, and I didn't know that. And so I would pursue these different places to go. You know, and suicide's a geographic of mine. I'm probably not the only person here. It's the quickest way out of town for a lot of us. And unfortunately, in many cases, we don't get a chance. I'm a person who is no better at living than I am at dying. So, you know, there I am. I'm here. And yeah, that's right. That's the right order. So anyway, I started drinking on the reservations because the folks on the reservation didn't have my family's phone number and could not call about my behavior. I don't know what you're like when you're drinking, but I am unlovely in my cups. There's two things I'll talk about relative to men. I like men. You're safe because I'm working a program, but I like you. And I'm in a hurry. Maybe I was born with Adidas on, I don't know. But what the deal is for me is if I see you, I don't see the point of messing around. If I see you, I like you, I just take off my clothes if I've been drinking. And sometimes my timing gets off. Like I did that at a wedding reception one time. And, and I was not the entertainment. They did not appreciate it. And the other thing I will do with men when I'm drinking, if you don't go along with my agenda, is I will chase you with a knife. And I never worked at Benihana's. I do not know how to use a knife, but I'm after you, And I'm not saying I did this with thousands of men, but I did it with enough. It was a pattern, And what I recognized, one of the other gifts of Alcoholics Anonymous is looking back at my life, which I felt I was so hard done by, and finding out that wasn't exactly true. That was the frame of mind that I had looking at my life. Because none of those men ever turned around and said to me, oh yeah, because I don't know what I would have done. So there were things that actually worked in my favor. I'm a big fat blamer. I don't know if you're a blamer, but here's what an old timer said to me when I came to AA this time. They said, you know what, Sia, if your life is somebody else's fault, AA ain't gonna work for you. And this time I needed AA to work for me. And so what I did is I adapted to the program instead of trying to adjust the program to as Sia sees it. So anyway, I started drinking as often as I could. When I drink, the effect produced is hope, basically. I mean, I'm not a hopeful person without a spiritual program. I'm pretty hopeless. And I'd stay out all night because that's a wonderful feeling to feel hope when it ain't yours naturally. And I came home one morning and one of my brothers called me out for behaving like that. At this point, my parents had separated. And so my mother was a single parent. She had financial problems. There's kids younger. I'm going to be in the parking lot pretty soon. Speaking of geographics. And she was a single parent. She had kids younger than me in the house. And I'll tell you what I found out. There's these terms we hear in the book, self-centeredness. I bristled at that. I don't know how you felt when you encountered that. I thought, of course I'm self-centered. I'm trying to save my life here, buzz off. But after I had been here a while, here's what I recognized. It never occurred to me to wonder how my mom was doing. I never wondered how she was. I never asked her how she felt. Her partner was gone. She had all these kids. Never. And so that is when I got it. And it was what we call in Alcoholics Anonymous a badly wrapped gift. That wasn't great news for me to see about myself, but it is this process that we call ego puncturing, that I could see the truth of why I needed to work this program. I am not a person who can just stop drinking. I got spiritual malady, I do. And I am still a resentment machine and a problem factory without enough program. So one of my brothers called me out, and you know what? I don't take that from anybody. I'll kill you. I'll kill the whole family. How about that, And my brother and I got in a fist fight, and my mom had to get between us. And this is when my mom had to ask me to leave. It is that line in the book again, the unwelcome hanger-on. And so now I'm drinking in Beverly Hills, and there's a line in the book called, it talks about whistling in the dark. And I bring it up because at this point, I wasn't having a great time every time I went out drinking. I don't know when this started to change for you, but I was not having a great time every time. Sometimes things didn't work out. Sometimes I had to compromise myself in ways I was not prepared to do to get out of situations. The people I went out with, I hadn't vetted properly. I don't know, I couldn't quite add it up, but it wasn't always a party. And so I could not afford to look at my drinking when I look back, or I would not look at my drinking and say, maybe this has something to do with drinking. No, that was off the table. And, and so here's the deal. I did and was drinking in Beverly Hills. However, the part I was leaving out of the story to myself and to you if I told you, is I was drinking at the bus stop in Beverly Hills. I don't know, that's just a different picture, you know what I'm saying? It's really. It's like saying you went to Paris, but you didn't mention you were in the Bastille, Yeah, so there I was. And I ended up drinking at a place way downtown. It was called the Good Night, and it wasn't. If you come to Los Angeles, I wouldn't look it up. It was a rough bar. And sometimes when young women drink in rough bars, stuff happens. And what happened in this bar is one night there was another young woman who drank in that bar, and she ended up with her head blown off in the vacant lot behind the building the bar was located in. I don't know what kind of, excuse me, what kind of violence was in your drinking. Is it going all right over there? No. Okay. Okay, I thought you were stalking me. You know, I was. And believe me, I can't wait. Okay. Anyway, I don't know what kind of violence was in your drinking. That was not typical of mine. It frightened me. And here's the thing that really frightened me about it. I was very much like Debbie. That was her name. I'm a person, when I drink in a bar, that I get between you and your drink. And I get between you and your meal, and you and your date, and I interrupt your conversation, the show you're watching, you know, and I create tension, and so fights break out. I'm that kind of person. And what I recognized is that this could have been me instead of Debbie. And so this is when I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe you have had more than your fair share. Maybe you should chill. Why don't you back off of it a little bit? This is when I said this to myself. And here's what happened instead. I started drinking behind my own back now instead of yours, you know. And it's kind of a funny turn of phrase, but I'm going to tell you something. I've been sober a long time now. I've lived a long time sober, and I was out there for a while before I got sober. Lots of stuff happens to us in life, you too, I'm sure. But of all the things that have happened to me in my entire life, the worst thing that ever happened to me was the inability to stop drinking when I wanted to. You know why? Because what separates man from animal is the right to choose. And I didn't have that. I did not have free will anymore. And at that point, I hated my guts. We call it the bondage of self. I could not stand myself. And here's the thing if you're new. You know, I felt so terrible about myself. I felt irredeemable. I was using abortion for birth control. I don't want to bring up an outside issue, but I'm telling you this because there were certain things I believed in as a human being. I had none of those left, none of them. And so something happened that brought me into Alcoholics Anonymous, and two things, really. First of all, I don't know if you go home tonight, if you're burglarized, you're probably going to notice. I was burglarized, but I didn't notice for 2 weeks. Come on, you know, who lives like that? Me. And then the other thing that happened, I was looking out of the window one day at the place where I lived, and I saw this guy walking down the sidewalk with a shotgun. I'm from Montana, so I know a shotgun when I see one. And he crossed the street, came in the courtyard up the stairs to my door. So I knew he had a shotgun, so I didn't answer the door. But I didn't know what to do. And I don't know if something like that happened for you, but that was a moment for me, I'll tell you. I was on my side of the door, and I was as quiet as I possibly could be, and my mind was racing. You know, Bill Wilson uses that language in his story. I was thinking, do I know this guy? I didn't recognize him. Maybe I did something to him in a blackout. Maybe that's what he's doing at my door. Or maybe it's the people I'm living with. Maybe they did something to him because I lived with those kind of folks. And I was those kind of folks, frankly, too. To be fair, I didn't know. And I'll tell you, it was a moment or a minute. It felt like it lasted 1,000 years. And there was a funny thing about this. I had started coming to or waking up, however you guys characterized it, and I'd started saying to myself, I ain't doing this anymore. I'm not going with those people. I'm going to turn this around. This is not going to keep happening. And I would say this to myself, or my mind would say this to me again and again and again, and it was the same every time. It was such a lie. It would always end up that I would drink, so that I want to bash my head against the wall or get run over by a car. You know, there's no off button for this obsession thing, and I hated it. But in this moment, that evening, it just wasn't my time, because I heard footsteps going back down the stairs. I don't know why, and this guy walked out of my life. And I don't know when you wanted help, but this is when I really wanted help. This is when, you know, I was like, this is too much for me. But here's the problem with me. I'm not a helpable person. I ain't. Not on my own. I'm just not. There's something in the book to the Family Afterward, I believe, where Bill talks about children from alcoholic homes. He says we're pathetically cynical. And maybe that is true, because I just didn't believe people. AA is not the first place that tried to help me. There were other places that tried to help me. I don't know about you, but there were the folks with the little clerical collar who would try to help me see life through sort of a spiritual lens, see it differently. And then there were the folks with the diplomas on the wall to help you with your thinking and your emotions. Okay, and then there's the ones with a straight up gun and the badge, and I know what you're doing here, let's get going. But here's what I knew about every single one of those people. Underneath all that jazz, they're just another lousy human being, just like me, And you ain't gonna get too far with somebody with that kind of an attitude. And so there it was. And I don't know, felt like a couple days later, I was someplace waiting for the obsession of the mind to hit. And, that's what ran my life. I don't know about you. I have this allergy of the body and obsession of the mind, as I mentioned. I didn't know those terms. I know I have an allergy to penicillin. I tried to parlay it when I came in here this time. I was desperate to understand this thing, this distinction, And so I got an allergy to penicillin. Here's what I know about my allergy to penicillin. I am never scoring a shot of penicillin again in this lifetime. I'll stake my life on that, you know what I mean? And yet, I will also tell you, I will absolutely drink again if I'm not in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is because of the second feature of alcoholism, that little thing called obsession of the mind. Because there's a thing in the book, a little throwaway line, the problem centers in the mind. And one day I was looking at that in my desperation, and I realized that ain't located in a bottle. That ain't in the past. That's right here, right up here with me. It just ain't drunk. And it just waits, or whatever you want to say about it. And this was shocking to me. It ain't over. I mean, there's no joke to that. And that's fine. AA works great for me. If you got something else, we got no corner on the market. That's the other thing I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't claim to do it better than anybody. We just say we're here. Just trying to keep track of my time. And, okay, so I was sitting there waiting for the obsession of the mind to hit, and I saw something about Alcoholics Anonymous in the community service section of the newspaper. And it said something like, we hold hands here, and we pray, and we don't drink anymore. I'm telling you, my first thought with that is it was as corny as hell. I tried to bat it away. But then there was this other voice that spoke, and I have heard other people in AA have this experience. It was a quiet voice, a distinct voice, and it said, I want to go. That's all it said. And that voice got the swing vote. So I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was a daytime meeting. It was smaller than this meeting. It was a nice little meeting. There was a woman at the door, and she greeted me. She gave me her phone number. She said she'd sponsor me. I was directed to the front of the meeting. I sat down, and the meeting started. And what happened is the same thing that happened to me in kindergarten. I got an attack of self-centered fear when I think they called for new people. And I wanted to get the hell out of there. And I was too frightened to do it. And it made me furious at myself. I was embarrassed. And that's one of my 100 forms of fear. And so then I just shut down. I didn't hear a thing that was said in that meeting. And I didn't take your book, and I don't know your damn steps or your traditions. And I ain't calling that lady. That's how I get help. But here's the weird thing. I went home. And you know what I have found? I have no defense against the first drink. There's many ways the book articulates this. But I also have no defense against Alcoholics Anonymous. And God bless you for that. Because when I came here, I was so defiant. And you said to me, Sia, you ain't a charity case here. You didn't patronize me. Maybe those folks weren't patronizing me either, but I felt patronized. And you cut through that because you said, you know what? I'm going to tell you about my drinking. It'll help me be sober today. And it gave me some grace or dignity that I no longer had. It gave me a choice. And so, you ain't a charity case. If you're new here, you ain't. And you ain't bad either. I felt so bad. And you know what? I'm the location of a bad problem, but I ain't bad, and neither are you. We have an illness. We are powerless. But where I got sober this time, they said to me, Sia, you're powerless. That's a reason. It ain't an excuse. There's things only you can do. We can't do it for you, and God, whatever that is, can't do it for you. You're the one who has to take certain steps to save your own life. And this time I was listening, and this time I was listening, and you didn't lie to me, Alcoholics Anonymous. You're alcoholics like me, you know. You got the same thing at stake. And you said, because I let you tell me your story, you could be sober today. I heard that humility. I was spiritually bankrupt. I heard you. I heard you. Thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I went home, and here's what happened. And I think I don't have too much time more for this, but, 8 minutes and 49 seconds. Okay. I don't know how much time passed. It wasn't long, a couple hours maybe, and here's what I noticed. That thing that I cannot pray away, pay away, hide from, negotiate with, outwit, obsession of the mind. That thing was gone, man. And I had to check myself, because the only time that thing went any place for me, I don't know about you, is if I had a drink. And I hadn't had one, and I was shocked. And you know what I realized, or what I believed, and I don't care what you believe, something happened in that meeting. I knew that was true. And you couldn't have told me that Michael did it, or Bruce did it, or Tom did it. No individual, you would have never made me believe that. But there was something that happened in that meeting. There was something. And I was grateful. And I said to myself, you know what, if something comes up, I'll be right back. Because here's the problem with me, with that. I thought I had a drinking problem. If you got a drinking problem, AA is going to work great for you. But I got this other thing. It's called alcoholism. It ain't a synonym. It ain't a euphemism. It's a thing. And what it reminds me of is like an iceberg. And the tip of the iceberg is the drinking. That's an essential symptom. But the whole underbelly of it is the spiritual malady. That's what sunk the Titanic, and that's what sunk me, man. And I was a couple weeks into a pink cloud experience, as we used to call it. I don't hear that term too much anymore, where I was just ecstatic to get out of bed and not have that thing driving me, that need a drink thing. It was thrilling to me. And I was full of self-reliance, unfortunately. I did not understand what I was dealing with. I went someplace, met with somebody I always had a bad history with, and nothing was any different. And I got mad at him. You know, like I said, I'm a resentment machine without enough program. I had nothing with a hole in it. Lost my temper with him, blew my sobriety. Then I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous, because I wanted that thing to happen for me that happened in the first meeting. You know, the surcease of the obsession. I'd like to ask you, what cup of coffee do you drink to get that? You know, I had no idea how to recreate that. And I wasn't talking to you. And so my alcoholism kind of swept me out the door. And I ain't a victim. I volunteered for that, but I did not know that. That is the ignorance of the alcoholic, like me. And that is what we're here for, those of us with any time, is that we can carry that message. I have been taught by you and your example to carry that message. And I was out for 7 years, and it got a lot worse. Never gotten better for anybody I ever talked to. They say they learned something, but you know, that's like Russian roulette. I was out there a couple times. I don't want to go out there. I don't want to learn nothing else from them. I just want to learn from you, you know, thank you. And I ended up in England, and I was modeling. It's what I called it. I don't know what you'd have called it. And you know, basically, I've always been in the I can't club, as I see it. You know, I can't show up for work. I don't know about you, but they fire me. Can't show up for the relationship. I don't know about you, but they file. I can't do it. And I walk in Alcoholics Anonymous this time when I did, and the first 2 times too, and I say, I can't stop drinking. And one of you turned to me and said, I can't either. That's the life-saving difference. You're exactly like me. You can't do it, but you're not drinking. How do you do it? You know, and your motive doesn't matter if you're new. I was intending to steal it or something. I wanted it. I wanted what you had, and I was going to try and get it my way, and this time I want to get it your way, you know. And so I stayed out all night like I like to do. I showed up for work. They took the pictures. I looked terrible. I looked like an alcoholic. You know, my face was bloated, my eyes were bloodshot. Not a vision for you, haha. And it was not the first bad day I had to work with these folks. You know, I'd walk down runways with my dresses on backwards. I walked out of my shoes. And so they were like, just get lost, okay? And the Bank of England called me in like the same nanosecond, and I was overdrawn at the bank. I mean, did that happen to you? It's that place we get to, the book talks about, where you cannot separate the true from the false. I thought I had a lot of money. Where did it go? I have no idea. Maybe it's over there somewhere, but I never found it. And so I went back to AA the second time. And in the interest of time, yeah, there's this thing, God's everything or God's nothing. You know when God's everything? When there's nobody else to call, in my case. And there was a woman in that business, she broke her anonymity, I called her, she took me to AA. You were supposed to do stuff for me. Is anybody else like that here, huh? You know, there were certain things I expected to happen and it didn't happen, and so I'm out of here. You know, there's another thing the book says, one who has all power may find him now. That day his name was Gerald, in my case, and it was because Gerald had tickets and was gonna take me on a geographic. So we're at Gatwick Airport, and you know, the first time I feel like God interceded, that's my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, was when I saw the guy with the shotgun. That was very convenient. This time, when I feel God interceded, it was very inconvenient. Because what happened is the federales came swooping down, they arrested the guy, they arrested the tickets too, and it's that thing in the book about take a trip, not take a trip, you know. And I didn't have enough program for not take a trip, and so one more time I blew my sobriety. Then I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and this time I wondered what I was doing here with you losers. You know, I was so mad. What am I doing here? I ain't asking you. I'm sick of you telling me stuff to do. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and here's where I got to. It's this identification thing. I don't know what meeting it was. I don't know what person it was. I don't know what they said. But somewhere along the line there, somebody did something. So I identified here. And you know what? I never identified at any damn place in my life. Not in church, not at home, not in kindergarten. This place, AA, behind my own back, became my home. I was in trouble. I went home. That's exactly what I got sitting in that meeting. And there was a guy in that meeting I'd never seen before, and so I went up to him and told him a little bit more truth than I normally would. And he listened politely for a minute, and then he gave me a phone number. Wrote it down. He said, you know what? If you want to work the program as Bill sees it and not as Sia sees it, why don't you call this person? He wasn't being a wise guy. He was just straight up, and he walked away. I'm standing at the turning point, right? Like we read about and how it works, and I'm going to ask God's protection and care with complete abandon. Or the unsaid thing is I ain't. And you know, I've stood with a lot of people in the time I've been here. I've offered that to them because you offered it to me. And sometimes what they say to me, I say, you know, call, I'd be glad to help you out. And they say they can't. You know what I know? Because I've been with you and you've taught me about honesty. It's the wrong verb. The real verb is you won't. And that's a life or death difference, you know, a life or death difference. And there was no other offer on the table, and I'll close with this. So I called this person. Now this was an alcoholic, just like you guys, and started talking away. And I knew they knew what they were talking about. But I already heard it. You know, I've been here 2 times, and I started to have this sinking feeling, like I already know this, I already tried this, just like it was slipping away from me. And then they said something to me. They said, if you want to clean up your act, maybe we can help you. You know what that is? That is the flimsy reed of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not even know what he meant by that. This was Clancy, my first sponsor. Didn't know what he meant by that, and I didn't care. I just wanted to live. I wanted to live. There was something you had, and I wanted what you had. So I got on a plane, I came to Los Angeles, and I got sober in the Pacific Group. One alcoholic yelling at another. Thank you.